Hello, my viewers out there. Welcome once again to Lorenzo Technology. Today, we are going to look at the difference between the absolute and relative references in Excel. Now, what is relative references? A relative cell reference is based on the relative position of the cell that contains the formula and the cell the reference refers to. If the position of the cell that contains the formula changes, the references also changes. If a formula is copied across the rows or down the columns, the reference automatically adjusts based on the relative position of the cell. An example of a relative referencing. Now, if you look at this, a simple student's result sheet, we have the test 1, test 2, test 3, and we have the exam. So how are we going to have the total? Set equal to sum. We are adding the test 1, test 2, test 3, and exam. That's when we have the total. So you drag here. That is A2. This is our A2 colon what? D2. It means that you should add from this. It means that you should add from A2, add B2, add C2, and also add D2, and that will give you the total. So you close the bracket, you click enter, give you the answer, which is 67. So now if you look at here, you see equal to sum A2 colon D2. Now if you click here, when you have the beauty of the Excel is when you have one answer, if you drag down, it will automatically calculate on its own. So if you click this place now and drag down up to this last one, it will automatically put the answer for you. Now if you look at this first one, this is A2 colon D2. You look at this one, A3 colon D3. Now during the time you drag this, automatically it will change the cell address on its own. That is what is referred to as a relative referencing. It will automatically change the cell address on its own. Okay, now what is the absolute references? An absolute cell reference in a formula such as D2 always refer to a cell in a specific location. If the position of the cell that contains the formula changes, the absolute references remains the same. If you copy the formula across rows and columns, the absolute references does not adjust. Okay, now let's look at the sample of absolute referencing. After our total, now we want to add 5 marks to each of the students. Now we can look for a place. Let's say this is row 9 column B, and put the 5 there. Okay, so how are we going to make the 5 constants so that it will not change? We are going to add the 5 to all this total. So how are we going to make it? Okay, so what you will do is, remember we are adding 5 to this total, so we are going to say that equal to, now this 5, if you look at the cell of this 5, this is column B and row 9, so the cell address will be what? B9. But anyway you want to make it constant, you have to add what? A dollar sign. So we say that equal to $B $9 plus what? Now we are adding to this column E2 plus E2, and you do what? You enter. Now if you add 67 plus 5 will give you 72. You drag it down to the end, you will notice that if you click here, you see that this is B9 still remain constant. while the E changes. Now if you click here, you see that we have B, $9 still remain constant while we have E4. Now if you click here, you see that we have B9 still remain constant while we have E5. If you click here, it still remain constant while this one change. So this one now, the B9 is the absolute referencing. It does not change. So whenever you want a cell to remain constant, you will add a $sign to the column and also a $sign to the row. Remember, the B is the column, Y9 is the row. So this is column B, row 9. So you say $B, $9, which means that it makes this 5 to be constant. Why this one will change? So this is the sample of absolute referencing. You must add a $sign before you add any other value to it so that it will remain constant, while the relative will change automatically when you drag it. Thanks and remain blessed.